All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to EBMUD's Water Wednesday. My name is Mary Campbell, and I'm the Community Affairs Representative for the Mokelumne Watershed at EBMUD, and I will be your host tonight. Water Wednesday is our monthly event where we explore important topics connected to EBMUD's water and wastewater systems. Tonight, we are taking you behind the scenes to learn how hatchery operations and watershed management work together to support the salmon of the Mokelumne River. We are joined by two of our EBMUD fisheries and wildlife experts, Casey and Matt. They will walk us through how the Mokelumne River watershed functions, how the hatchery sustains healthy salmon populations, and what we learn by tracking their journey from river to ocean and back. You will also hear about an exciting new AI-powered fish counting system that's changing the way our biologists collect and analyze data. This project is helping us improve accuracy, efficiency, and long-term fisheries management. As always, tonight's Water Wednesday is being recorded and will be posted within a week at eastbaymud.com/Water Wednesday. By attending this event, you consent to being recorded. If you have questions at any point, please add them to the Q&A box. Catherine Horn, our Senior Community Affairs Representative, will be helping answer questions throughout the presentation. We will also set aside some time at the end for additional questions. And if something comes to mind after the event, or you don't get your question answered live, you can email waterwednesday@ebmud.com, and we'll share that email again before we close. So to get us started, I have a short video that we'll look through, and then we'll pass it over to Casey.
Welcome to the Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery. While you're visiting, let's take a behind-the-scenes look at the fascinating journey salmon and steelhead make as they're carefully nurtured here. Each season, adult fish make their way up the hatchery's fish ladder, a series of stair-stepped pools that guide them upstream. At the top, they enter a holding area where the journey continues inside. Inside the hatchery, salmon and steelhead are sorted. Ripe females, those ready to spawn, are separated, while unripe females are held for a few more days until their eggs are ready. Once inside, adult fish are sedated for safe handling. Ripe females are opened to harvest eggs without causing damage, while eggs from steelhead are delicately expelled using air pressure. Sperm from males is mixed with the eggs, a critical moment that must happen quickly. As water touches the eggs, tiny openings close and fertilization is complete. Fertilized eggs, each about the size of a pea, are placed in water-hardening tanks where they're treated to prevent disease. Any unfertilized eggs turn white and are removed. The remaining eggs are carefully transferred to incubators to ensure fresh water flows over them. Two types of incubators protect the eggs during development. Stacks of incubation trays allow water to trickle down, while upwelling jars work in reverse, letting water rise from below. Newly fertilized eggs are sensitive, so they're kept in low light and handled with care. After about 18 days, eggs begin to show eye spots, and around 35 days, they hatch into tiny sac fry. These young fish carry a yolk sac that nourishes them as they grow. When ready, the young salmon and steelhead are moved to rearing troughs, where they are cared for as they mature into healthy, strong fish. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of the hatchery, these fish will one day return to the Mokelumne River and continue the cycle.
All right. So now I'd like to introduce Casey Del Real, and he will start with some hatchery operations overview.
Great. Thank you so much. Happy to be here and excited to share some information about the Mokelumne River and the Mokelumne River Fisheries Program. And with that, I will share my screen and I have a presentation prepared. Okay. Mary, can you please confirm that everyone can see the presentation?
Yes, can you hit presenter mode on it?
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so with that, I will start. Again, I will be providing an overview of the Mokelumne River Fisheries program managed by EBMUD and coordinated with our local and regional partners. For this presentation, I'll be going over briefly the Mokelumne River Watershed and what a watershed is. We'll briefly talk about anadromous species, define anadromous species, and talk a little bit about some of the native anadromous species in the lower Mokelumne River. And then we'll be discussing the lower Mokelumne River Fisheries Management Program. So with that, we'll do a quick overview of the Mokelumne River Watershed. So just wanted to start by defining what a watershed is. So a watershed is a land area that drains into a particular body of water, like a river, lake, reservoir, or bay. And so that watershed boundary is determined by topography. Basically, the ridge lines are the watershed divide, so that any precipitation, be snow or rain, that falls within that watershed boundary will ultimately move downstream within the rivers or percolate into the groundwater within that watershed. And so surface runoff from land ultimately flows, like we said, downstream. And for this instance, in the Mokelumne River watershed and for EBMUD, it flows into Pardee Reservoir, then ultimately Comanche. So quick overview of water supply for the service area. 90% of the water that ultimately reaches the East Bay for the service area comes from the Mokelumne River watershed. And that originates from Pardee Dam and Reservoir. 10% comes from East Bay watersheds. And then we do actually have a supplemental supply that we're actually able to draw from the Freeport project. That comes from the Central Valley project contract, and that's only during dry water years. And then just a little bit overview of the kind of water supply and EBMUD operations associated with our operations. EBMUD protects about 600 square miles of watershed lands, and ultimately supplies EBMUD with 325 million gallons of water daily, up to that amount. So I wanted to also give a brief overview of kind of the area that we'll be talking about today, kind of the watershed itself, and then downstream into the lower Mokelumne River. So the Mokelumne River watershed is located south of Lake Tahoe and originates high in the Sierra within a lot of the protected lands. And that water source originates primarily as snowmelt that will flow downstream into Pardee Reservoir. From Pardee Reservoir, we have the Mokelumne River, the Mokelumne aqueducts. There are three 38-mile-long water supply pipes that ultimately transport Mokelumne River water to the East Bay service area. Mentioned the Freeport project. That's the water supply, supplemental water supply during dry years. That's located on the Sacramento River, south of Sacramento, and it actually transports water all the way and meets up with the Mokelumne aqueduct. Then flowing downstream from Pardee is Comanche, and then the lower Mokelumne River. I thought it would also be interesting to just let you folks know that EBMUD is not the only water user in the Mokelumne River watershed. There's a number of other water users, including Pacific Gas and Electric, Amador Water, Calaveras County Water District, Calaveras Public Utility District, North San Joaquin Conservation District, and then moving downstream, the riparian and senior appropriators, water rights holders. There's Woodbridge Irrigation District. And then I don't want to also leave out as a water user the salmon and steelhead, which we'll be focusing on during this talk today. So I do want to kind of highlight the lower Mokelumne River. That's where it's going to be the focus of the talk for the rest of this presentation. And so basically, the lower Mokelumne River starts at the base of Comanche Dam and Reservoir. Comanche Dam and Reservoir does provide flood control recreation flood control and recreation downstream. It also provides to meet downstream water rights and environmental obligations within the lower Mokelumne River. And that's a lot of that, the focus of this talk is going to be associated with those operations related to salmon management. And then at the base of, and then the picture on the left here, that's Comanche Dam, Comanche Reservoir, and you can also see the hatchery that's located at the base of Comanche Dam. And then on the right side here, that's just an image of the lower Mokelumne River, Comanche and lower Mokelumne River, so that you can see that it does flow downstream into the central delta. That's kind of an important part of the dynamics of the lower Mokelumne River and where we're located. And then we're ultimately meet at the confluence with the San Joaquin River. So today we're going to be focusing on anadromous species. So wanted to spend a moment just to kind of define that term for folks. Anadromous species are fish that are born in fresh water, that migrate to the ocean to grow big and strong and mature, and then return to fresh water to spawn. And I have 3 examples of anadromous species in the lower Mokelumne River, going from left to right. It's Chinook salmon, that'll be the primary focus of this talk today. But we also have steelhead, rainbow trout, and then Pacific lamprey. So just to kind of demonstrate what an anadromous life cycle is, I thought we would look at the fall run Chinook salmon life cycle. What's a bit unique about the Mokelumne River is that we both have the natural cycle, that would be kind of in the in-river wild population, but we also have the hatchery. So this life cycle here represents both of those life cycles, but I'll just be kind of generally describing the fall run Chinook salmon life cycle specifically. So in the fall, this time of year, why this presentation is timely is that the adults are returning to spawn in river. So they return anywhere from late August, September through December and January. The females build their gravel nest in redds in the river. The males fertilize the eggs, and after spawning, the adults do die, which ultimately contributes to nutrient cycling in the riparian and actually terrestrial ecosystem also. Then there's the egg stage, where fertilized eggs will remain in the gravel or fertilized and reared at the hatchery facility. Then the eggs hatch into alevin, which have yolk sac fry. Those yolk sacs actually contain nutrients that support early development. Then those alevins become seamed up fry, and once they've ingested that yolk sac, they'll emerge from the gravel and move in river to the slow edgewater habitats and move into inundated floodplains. In the springtime now, for fall run, those fry undergo physiological changes that prepare them for life in saltwater in the ocean, and that's called smoltification, and refer to those juveniles as smolts at that time. Once they migrate out into the ocean, they can reside in the ocean for about 1 to 4 years. Their diet generally consists of krill, anchovy, sardines, and other marine prey. And then they ultimately return as adults or grills to the river as between 2 and 5 years old, completing that life cycle. So some of the benefits of this life cycle is that there's increased feeding and growth opportunities in the ocean, but there is reduced competition in freshwater. So they'll migrate back into freshwater, so their juveniles have that reduced competition for food and habitat in their natal streams. But because anadromous fish grow larger in the ocean, they're actually able to migrate out to the ocean, grow big and strong, and then adult females can return for Chinook salmon again, fall run Chinook salmon, with about 5,000 eggs in their bellies. Once they're in fresh water, they have really generally high quality spawning and incubation environments. And then this also provides genetic diversity and resilience for the species. So with multiple life stages in different habitats that can buffer against localized habitat issues and failures. And then the ocean conditions and freshwater conditions vary independently. So risk is spread out across ecosystems. So those are benefits for the species, but there's also benefits for the ecosystem. Kind of referenced it before, anadromous species, those adult returning spawners, bring that marine-derived nutrients back to the riparian ecosystem, and as they die after spawning, their carcasses break down and provide abundant food source, both for species here in riparian corridors, but also for their young that emerge from the red with a plentiful food supply in the aquatic environment. And then also general food web support. So with that, I think we could move on to the lower Mokelumne River management. So what I'd like to focus on today and kind of summarize the EBMUD fisheries program is both our hatchery program and the in-river natural origin wild salmonid species. That's kind of the focus, but we also are maintaining the lower Mokelumne River for native species also. So for the hatchery program, the hatchery artificially propagates fall-run Chinook salmon and steelhead. There's two different programs that are operated at the Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery, and that is the mitigation program, which EBMUD is responsible for managing and implementing, and the ocean enhancement program with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife are responsible for. There's kind of two different objectives with those programs and different goals. So for the mitigation program, EBMUD is responsible for rearing and releasing 3.4 million Chinook salmon annually, and those fish are released at Sherman Island in the Delta. In addition, our goal is to rear and release 250,000 steelhead yearlings released into the lower Mokelumne River. For the ocean enhancement program for CDFW, that funding comes from the Commercial Salmon Stamp Program. Their goal is 3 million Chinook salmon smolts reared and released at this facility, and those are released anywhere from Monterey Bay to the San Francisco estuary. And just a little bit more background on the Ocean Enhancement Program for CDFW. They're also going to be rearing an additional 1 million smolts at the Feather River Fish Hatchery. And so for that program, when the fishery was open, Mokelumne River Fish actually represented up to 51% of the statewide commercial salmon catch. So it's a large contribution to that fishery, and that program is active and ongoing at the Moke Hatchery. A big part of this program is the constant fractional marking program. So I did want to kind of take a moment to let people know about this program, and because of this, we're actually able to assess the operations of the hatchery. So what is the constant fractional marking? Well, it's a Central Valley-wide program that mandates that a minimum of 25% of Chinook salmon that are raised in Central Valley hatcheries are adipose fin clipped and coated wire tagged. So on the pictures of the salmon here, the adipose fin is a fleshy fin that's located on the caudal peduncle of Chinook salmon. And when a juvenile fish reared at the facility is coated wire tagged, it also receives an adipose fin clip. So that fleshy fin is removed, and you can see by these pictures here, the kind of upper left one, that has the fin removed. On the right side, that fin is still intact. By removing that fin, it doesn't really impact its ability to swim or feed or survive. But visually, we can see that, okay, this salmon has an adipose fin clip and a coated wire tag. And so the coated wire tag is pictured, it's basically like the size of a little splinter. And you can see that on the tip of that finger there. And each coated wire tag has a code inscripted on it. And you can see by that kind of blown up picture. You can't really read it with the bare eye, but each release group of hatchery fish, 25% of those fish are marked with that same code. So basically, we know where these fish are being released, and what conditions they're being released, and what program they're associated with. And once those fish are either harvested in the fishery or returned to the Central Valley to spawn either in the river or in the hatcheries, those heads of those adipose fin clip fish are collected, those coated wire tags are removed, and then they provide insight into the success of individual release groups, release strategies, management actions, special studies that were implemented, stray rates, that's an important one for us, and then also contributions to fisheries. So that's how we can say that mokefish make up, over 50% or have as made up as much as 50% of the commercial fishery. So very important part. And again, ongoing program, although this is an evolution of how we continue to assess hatchery operations, and we'll see how it evolves in the future. So did want to mention that the hatchery has gone through a lot of changes over the years. And so the hatchery was built in 1964 in order to mitigate for the lost spawning and rearing habitat upstream of Comanche Dam. So that was why it initially was constructed. And you can see in the upper left here, by 1970, it was not the same as it is now. Those were like earthen channels. And so in 1997, by then we had the hatchery building and fish ladder, which was important. But in 2001, we initiated the construction of the modern footprint. And by 2003 is the modern facility that we have today. And EBMUD made some critical and important investments into that infrastructure. And a couple ones to note is that the hatchery building where we spawn salmon has a chiller. So we can, any water that's going into the hatchery building, we can chill that water down to 8 degrees. We typically range from 10 degrees Celsius to 12 degrees Celsius in that optimal spawning range. We also have sand filters, which removes unwanted particles. So that fine sediment doesn't settle on those eggs and suffocates them. And then we also have ultraviolet light that treats the water to remove pathogenic organisms. So all the water that's going into the hatchery building is really high quality water. And then in the reservoir, we also installed a hypovolemic oxygenation system, which is in response to concerns with hydrogen sulfide. So those investments into this facility have improved green egg to smolt, really smolt survival to about 92 to 95%, when other hatcheries are seeing about a 70% survival. Another big part of the successes that we've seen on the lower Mokelumne River comes from the joint settlement agreement and the lower Mokelumne River partnership. So the joint settlement agreement was established in 1998 that mandated flow and non-flow actions and developed the lower Mokelumne River partnership. The partnership is an integrative adaptive management approach to ecosystem and fisheries management, and it's a formal collaboration between resource agencies and stakeholders to optimize river management for the benefit of the fisheries, and again within that adaptive management framework. And any adaptive management actions that we take on the river are presented and discussed within the partnership, and consensus is reached to implement these projects. So for Chinooks, for EBMUD operations, we have a variety of life stage monitoring that we conduct. We basically conduct monitoring for all the life stages of salmon that enter back into the river. And that includes our video monitoring. So we get a count of salmon, actual count of salmon returning to the lower Mokelumne River. Matt will be discussing this program also. We have our carcass surveys where we're going out and collecting the heads of adipose fin clipped salmon. We have our red surveys where we have crews going out and marking all of our reds so that we can identify where those salmon are building their nests and their reds, if they're within our enhancement sites, and identify the distribution of those reds throughout the spawning reach. Once those juveniles emerge from the reds, we have our rotary screw trap operations where we track their movement downstream and come up with population and survival estimates. We have an ongoing acoustic telemetry program where we can individually tag Chinook salmon smolts and track their movement from the lower Mokelumne River all the way out to the Golden Gate Bridge. Then in-river work, we have some seining surveys that we do to look at habitat use and distribution and growth rates. Then we also have fish communities survey where we use our electrofishing boat and sample size from the base of Comanche Dam all the way out to the lower Mokelumne River to look at fish health and fish community and structure. We also have an ongoing habitat restoration project. This includes habitat restoration for both our spawning areas and our floodplain rearing habitats. These are ongoing programs. Our spawning enhancement program started in 1990 and has evolved over the years. And our floodplain restoration is an ongoing project, and we're continuing to assess and look for new opportunities for floodplain restoration. In total, we've placed over 56,000 cubic yards of gravel in the river and have restored about 4 acres of floodplain habitat to date. And so what that means for the lower Mokelumne River is that we are not spawning habitat deficient anymore. And with our ongoing floodplain restoration sites, we continue to provide habitats for juvenile salmon to grow big and strong. And then in the upper right picture here, it's just a picture of a large gravel pile, and that's a component of our floodplain restoration projects. Because we're typically dropping the elevation of those habitats down so that they're inundated at specific flows, there's an opportunity to harvest the appropriately sized spawning gravel from those areas. So what we've started to initiate with those floodplain projects is we'll actually sift all that sediment, harvest the appropriately sized gravel, which is about 1 to 4 inches in diameter, and then we'll stockpile that on site. And so right now we have a few years of gravel that we've harvested again from the watershed and from these floodplain habitats that we can put right back into the river and create high quality spawning habitat. And what we've seen is that salmon love these areas. They're clean, great areas to spawn in. And we've been able to document that spawning success, both from our red surveys, but our seining, our juvenile monitoring, including the seining surveys, and our rotary screw trap operations, where we're tracking those juveniles as they migrate out of the system. And so based off of our monitoring program, specifically video monitoring program, this is a graph of returning adults spawners to the river. And so the orange bars are salmon passage. Those are our salmon counts. Those are daily salmon counts. And we can do that because at our video monitoring station, we're counting every salmon that moves past that video monitoring station. So we can get a count of salmon, and then we also have a gauging station just downstream of there that monitors, among other things, flow. So we know the flow that's coming out of Comanche. We know the flow that's moving past the Woodbridge Irrigation District, where our video monitoring station is located. And so we can create a figure like this. And so the green line is the flow downstream of Comanche, and this is daily average flow. So it's actually not representing the specific flow that is being released, but it's averaged for daily. The blue line is the flow downstream of the Woodbridge Irrigation District Dam, where our video monitoring station is located. This is a good site for us to monitor salmon passage and count the salmon that are in the lower river because it's downstream of all the available spawning habitat. So with that, we can kind of line these up, and the peaks in flow are some of the adaptive management actions that we take on the lower Mokelumne River. These are pulse flows, they're attraction flows. They're designed to attract salmon back to the river. The way that a salmon finds its way home, it uses olfactory senses. That it basically smells the water that it originated from in the natal stream, because salmon want to return to spawn. in the river or stream that they were born in. So they are trying to find their way home. So because the Mokelumne River has had issues with strain, we wanted to develop a program that attracted our salmon back to the river. So ultimately, what we've seen is by releasing these attraction flows, they do two things: that salmon can find their way back using their sense of smell, but those pulse flows kind of mimic storm events, and so that it initiates that upstream movement that they can key in on. And what we have seen in multiple years, this is very representative, is that this year, based on the allotted allocated water, we had 3 pulse flows events, and we see that those spikes in passage associated with each of those events, increasing escapement to the river and supporting the Mokelumne River fishery. The gray area here is coordination that we do with the Bureau of Reclamation to try and have them coordinate with them to close the Delta Cross Channel. Delta Cross Channel is just located upstream of the North and South Fork of the lower Mokelumne River, where there's a gate within the Delta Cross Channel that the Bureau can open and close and release water from the Sacramento River that ultimately flows into the North and South Fork and then down to the South Delta pumping facilities. So when those gates are open, that allows for a potential attraction flow from that water, and also it allows a route for those fish to move following that flow into the Sacramento River and stray north into the Sacramento River and ultimately spawning in the American River or farther upstream in the Nimbus or the Upper Sac. So what we've been trying to coordinate with is coordinate these pulse flows, but then coordinate with the Bureau of Reclamation to close those. They the Delta gates, but they also have to model water quality within the Delta. So when they are not able to do that, because of water quality concerns, they are unable to protect our 3 pulses. But what we do see was a nice return from those pulses. And then we can also look at cumulative counts, and those cumulative counts for this year, 2025, is that kind of solid red line that's a little thicker than the others. The last 2 years, we have had historic salmon runs, and last year we had over 35,000 salmon return to the river. So this year it looks like we're having, a more of a kind of a typical year, if you will, but we're kind of hitting the middle of kind of the runs that we've had since 2016. But right now, this is nothing to be concerned about. We're actually having a very good run, even though it's not in comparison to some of the higher runs that we've had. But based on the mitigation and enhancement production goals at the hatchery comes up annually with an egg take model. So we know how many eggs that they need, and they're right on track in terms of collecting the necessary eggs for them to meet their production goals. And so anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 spawners, really we can meet the hatchery obligations, but then also support in-river of the in-river population, which is an important component to fisheries management along the lower Mokelumne River. So as this run continues, we'll continue to see salmon come into the river. So this year is shaping up to be a good run for the Mokelumne River. And so I just wanted to briefly touch on why we're doing this work and why it's important. So I think we talked quite a bit about kind of the hatchery obligations, again in terms of mitigating for that loss of historic spawning rearing habitat upstream. But salmon are also a keystone species. They transport that marine-derived nutrients from the ocean back into the riparian freshwater ecosystem, supporting both that aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems and a variety of birds, mammals, insects, ultimately, supporting the entire food web. There's also cultural significance. Salmon are central to traditional diets, traditions, and the economics of many of the local tribes, indigenous communities. There's also additional economic benefits in terms of they support a healthy fishery There's biodiversity and resilience. There's also water quality and habitat indicators. So salmon populations really can reflect the health of a watershed. And by improving conditions for salmon species, benefit other species, like an umbrella species, if you will. There are legal and regulatory obligations too. So it is associated with the joint settlement agreement and our FERC license. And so we are mitigating for that lost habitat, but also for the in-river population. There's great opportunities for environmental education and stewardship, but also the EBMUD Fisheries program really does support EBMUD's mission to manage the natural resources in which the district is entrusted and to preserve and protect the environment for future generations. And so just kind of wanted to leave you with this. There is a lot that goes into this. There's an extensive coordination that happens not just within EBMUD in order to make sure that we are monitoring the life stages, but providing the conditions to sustain these populations, both in river and at the hatchery. And there's extensive coordination that goes on with our local and regional partners. And so these are both agency partners, water districts, landowners, interested publics, the fishing industry, conservation, and NGOs, and a variety of additional water agencies. So it's an extensive coordination and collaboration, and basically a program that really seeks to continue to see the benefits that we have on the lower Mokelumne River. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Mary.
All right. Thank you so much, Casey. All right. And Matt, if you'd like to share your screen.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And how does that look?
If you can hit, oh, there you go. You're in presenter mode. You're good to go.
Okay, cool. Okay, my name is Matt Soldate, and I'm a fisheries biologist here at East Bay Mud. I'll be presenting East Bay Mud's monitoring efforts of the upstream migration of adult Chinook salmon. So this is a map of the lower Mokelumne River from the Comanche Reservoir all the way down to the delta where the Moke meets the San Joaquin River. And you can kind of see the two forks, the north and the south fork of the Mokelumne River before they converge and then end up in the San Joaquin River. Casey mentioned our JSA agreement in the previous presentation. One requirement of that agreement is to monitor fish passage, namely Chinook salmon and steelhead in the lower Mokelumne River. Our monitoring location, where this red arrow is at the Woodbridge Irrigation District Dam, and that's in the town of Woodbridge, kind of adjacent to Lodi. This is around 24 river miles below Comanche Dam and the Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery. And we usually conduct year-round monitoring at this location, but our official start to the fall run Chinook salmon season begins August 1st every year and ends January 31st of the next year. Chinook salmon river spawning in the lower Mokelumne River typically occurs in the 10 to 11 river mile stretch below Comanche Dam, and that's going to be this green highlighted section here. So I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but when I originally started working at East Bay Mud, uh, this monitoring was conducted primarily using a VHS recorder with a tape carousel. VHS tapes were collected daily and reviewed in the office with a VCR, TV, and remote. During periods of high turbidity, which is kind of the cloudiness of the water, we would transition into trapping Chinook salmon in the fish ladder and passing them upstream manually. Back with the old ladder and the old dam, turbidity had a much greater impact on the old method of video monitoring. And you can probably imagine the effort it takes to move all those fish upstream by hand. So in 2005, the Woodbridge Irrigation District began construction of a new dam, and this is the image on the left, the actual construction. You can see on the right-hand side, that's the old the board dam. And as many of you know, Lodi Lake is upstream of the dam. The new dam, which is seen on the picture of the right, included plans for 3 state-of-the-art fish ladders. There's 1 high stage ladder, and that's in use during the period when Lodi Lake is full. And there's 2 low stage ladders, and those can be used during times when Lodi Lake is drained, and that's typically for dam maintenance, and it usually takes place in February. The dam rebuild also gave us use of the WID control room, which you can see on the right picture in the upper left-hand side. And this control room contained internet access and power, and this was kind of crucial in our ability to update our monitoring equipment and move away from the VHS tapes. This is an overhead view of the current high stage fish ladder, and this is taking drone footage taken by our very own Mary Campbell. Pretty nice footage. The high stage lit fish ladder is considered a type of vertical slot ladder, and inside the ladder, there's a concrete channel of interconnected pools. There's around 30 different pools. These pools contain baffles, vertical slot openings the fish can pass through, and they also contain resting pools that the fish can kind of take a break in as they're traveling through the ladder. And as I mentioned before, there are also 2 additional ladders, and you can kind of see those on the right. They're typically dry for most of the year. They're only in operation when Lodi Lake is drained for dam maintenance. Like I said, it's just the 2 weeks in February, and that's after our salmon run. So pretty much the whole salmon run is monitored using that high stage ladder. The white hatch to the left is the salmon viewing vault, and this is a 14-foot climb down into a room adjacent to the fish ladder. And in that vault contains a window with a view into the ladder, and it also houses our video monitoring camera and other equipment. So I'll just provide a brief overview of our video monitoring methods. The image in the upper left-hand corner is a view into the vault at the Woodbridge Irrigation District Dam fish ladder. Images in here are captured by an IP camera, and this sends video data into the WID control room, which you can see here on the right. It's stored there on a backup network video recorder and NVR. And it is also streamed via a dedicated fiber optic line to the main NVR at the Lodi Fisheries and Wildlife Office. So we kind of have a redundancy between the 2. So if we have a power outage at either spot, we have battery backups at both. And yeah, we typically never suffer any data loss due to any power outages or anything else. So here the video is downloaded to office computers for manual fish passage review using ExactVision security software. This clip is an example of what the video can look like on a busy day. This particular video clip was taken from our greatest one-day count in the history of video monitoring, and this was last season, our 35,000 plus fish run. And over 38,000 fish passed through the Woodbridge fish ladder that day. There's been runs in the past that have not even reached 3,800, so it was a pretty amazing day. I also wanted to show this day because it was during a period of elevated turbidity. Fish, compared to the old ladder, they're now funneled into a slightly narrower space in front of the window. So turbidities don't have quite the same effect that they once did. And because of this, we can pretty much always video monitor, and we can minimize fish stress by no longer trapping and handling them. So some of the data we collect on the fish includes fish species. So you can see these These two fish here, Chinook salmon. Most of these are actually Chinook salmon. Here's a steelhead here. Sex. So on this image, you have a male and a female. Life stage, which is kind of determined by the fork length of the fish. Each line here in the background is 100 millimeters. So an adult fish, for our purposes, is a fish 700 or greater, 700 millimeters or greater, and a gross fish is anything under that. And so a gross fish is typically a 2-year-old fish, like Casey was talking about earlier. And then we can look for marks, which is, an adipose fin clip like this steelhead has here. Floy tags and disc tags. We record the passage time the fish moves through the ladder. We record the passage type, whether it's either up through the ladder or down through the ladder. And then we record physical anomalies. That could be abrasions, hook scars from fishing, fungus, like this guy here, lacerations, predator wounds, which this laceration is most likely a predator wound. And then, stuff like scoliosis on this fish. And then we also record predation events, otters on salmon and other fish species. In addition to Chinook salmon, I'll just touch on a few additional fish species we see using the ladder. Native fish species we monitor in the Wade fish ladder include steelhead, Pacific lamprey, Sacramento pike minnow, and Sacramento suckers. Those are all really common fish to see in there. And then non-natives or introduced species such as striped bass, largemouth bass, common carp, different species of catfish. There's just a whole lot of fish that we see in there on a daily basis. While not a fish species, we also keep records on river otters using the fish ladder. I did have the Jaws theme music playing on this video, but I decided to remove it. Um, there's been a family of otters living near the dam and using the fish ladder to hunt for quite a few years. So we document any predation events and any harassment to the fish. And then you can see here on some of these pictures, the predator wounds on these fish, which we're assuming are otters. It could also be caused from sea lions or other creatures. And then we have we have a big problem with them taking out a Pacific lamprey. This is a catfish in this picture here. So yeah, just something we kind of keep an eye on. We know this particular area of the ladder is kind of a pinch point for the salmon. And we think the otters kind of key in on this area. So just something we monitor. The river otters are still a native species, so really not much we can do about it unless it gets really bad. So we have salmon counts for the Mokelumne River since 1940, and East Bay Mud tracks salmon escapement in three main categories. We have the count before Comanche Dam was built, which is pre-1964, and then we have the period after Comanche was built, but before we signed the FERC settlement agreement, which is the JSA that Casey was talking about earlier, and that provided flow and non-flow measures for fish. And then we track the post joint settlement period, which is 1998 to present day. So the horizontal black lines on here represent averages for those three periods. These shaded, dithered regions are periods of drought. But you can see from these averages that we've had a positive fish response to the JSA flows, and the post JSA flow or the post JSA count average count now is over 11,000 fish. Previous to that, it was 3,600, so we're almost three times as many fish now post JSA. So we're pretty proud of that. The last thing I'm going to kind of talk about is our fish passage automation project. Beginning in January of this year, we began working on a project with Kramer Fish Sciences to develop an automated fish counting program using machine learning and Python programming language. One of the first steps was to develop training data for an object detector and a key point detector. And these are just large machine learning models that will essentially predict where in an image of fish is and the confidence values of that class. We used a program called CVAT, which is a computer vision annotation tool to annotate fish features and key points in thousands of images. I think we're up to 6 or 7 thousand images of various fish, mostly salmon and steelhead. But yeah, pretty much everything we see in the ladder. And the program uses the position of these key points and the shape of the fish to classify each one. So if you look up here at this male, you can see that the distance between the end of the nose or snout is much greater than this female. So stuff like that is how it's classifying these fish. And then, also the missing points in the adipose fin is how it's classifying the ad-clipped fish. We're now kind of in the validation phase of this project. We've run wooden substitute fish of known lengths through the wood fish ladder to test the program's accuracy and measurements. The bottom left fish kind of shows four deep learning models working together. These are detection, segmentation, automated measurements, and tracking. This blue color the fish has, this results from this depth map tool we're using up here. Um, so it uses the entire image and it predicts the distance of the object from the camera. And this is used to increase the accuracy of the measurements as a fish is closer to the window, it will appear larger than a fish further back. So that's why we're using that depth map tool. The confusion matrix on the lower right here is just showing how well the model is classifying fish so far. The false positives on the matrix are just pointing out fish that are not entirely on the screen and they don't have a box drawn in the training data, but the model predicted a box on it. And here is the program in action. So you can see the program can process at over 30 frames per second when no fish are present. I'll go ahead and start this over if I can. Once a fish is detected, processing speeds slow down to between 3 to 5 frames per second. Both of these fish are being classified correctly, and this shows all the deep learning models working on each frame that the fish passes through. An entire video without many fish can be processed in around 3 hours so far. A day full of fish may take around 5 or 6 hours. This makes the program much faster than manually viewing videos. That it can take manually viewing a video with a lot of fish can probably take 2 to 3 times longer than the speed that this is able to process. This is one of our user interfaces of the program. It's a QC tool. And this is actually showing the outputs of those two fish in the previous clip. And so using this, we can query fish species, sizes, stages, sex, marks, passage direction, and other data to be used to QC the results. So far this season, we've only had a difference of 3% between the automated counts and the human counts. So we're pretty impressed with those totals. But we can use this tool to assess the accuracy of the program and look for potential issues. And so we have noticed a couple issues at least so far. One issue we've discovered so far with the AI program is that it can miss a passage when fish pass partially behind another fish, which is to be expected. Our human counters can pick up these with relative ease. But without a good portion of the fish in the image, the AI program just doesn't know how to classify the fish. So this is one of the next issues we're going to try to tackle. We've also had an overestimation of grilse females, so those 2-year-old smaller fish. It's not really surprising because those smaller fish, the males and the females, look very similar to each other. They don't have the sexual differentiation that the bigger fish have. So not really a surprise to us. It's just we think it's just gonna take more training data to be inputted to the program. And that is it for me. And thanks for allowing me to share this information on our video monitoring program.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt. All of that information so interesting, and I enjoy hearing it when you guys present. Okay, let me share. If you can stop sharing, and I'll share.
Yeah.
All right. So really quick as we wrap up, I just want to, oh, are you seeing my screen? Which one? I just want to touch on the hatchery. So, at the hatchery, you can go view the salmon spawning. We will be spawning tomorrow morning. It always happens really early. So, between like the 8 and 9 o'clock hour is a great time if you want to go see them spawning. We do salmon education at the hatchery. We have students, a couple thousand students from Calaveras, Amador, and San Joaquin County that come up every year, and so many of these teachers do an amazing job at bringing salmon into the classroom and teaching the kids about the life cycle, how to be good stewards of our environment. And they get to actually raise salmon eggs in their classroom from January to March, and then they come release them in the river. So that's a really fun program that we have for students, but the hatchery is open to the public from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. And right now is a great time. All of the fish are in the river if you take a walk down to the river, as well as, let's see here. Oh, and you'll see them in the ladder and in the holding tanks. But here are a list of the spawning dates that are coming up. And so these are the remaining spawning dates for fall. So you're welcome to come between that 8 and 9 a.m. hour and see the spawning that happens in the hatchery. We have amazing staff with CDFW there that are, when they're not doing the spawning, they're out and about feeding, willing to answer your questions. So we invite you out to the hatchery, and that is in the Clements area. And so with that, we did have a few questions, but we're running short on time here. Let me pull that up. Stop sharing. All right. I'm also putting into the chat the link to that video we shared at the very beginning it's on YouTube. And so I know if sound was an issue, you can go back and watch that, and that will give you a full rundown of everything that happens at the hatchery. So for questions, Casey, in your presentation, you had the pulse flows that showed the fish coming back. Was the bigger pulses of fish there towards the end, was that due to the recent rain that we had?
Yeah, so there's a mixture of factors. I didn't felt like I was running out of time there, so I didn't really get into those lower pulses. But we had the three spikes and passes associated with our pulse flows, which is great to see. That's the intended purpose for those pulse flows events. But the one that happened later, there's probably a couple factors that would be influencing those spikes and passes that we documented. So yes, that rain event, wouldn't necessarily see that on the gauging station, but definitely a rain event. The Stanislaus and Tuolumne also conduct pulse flow events, and that was after they concluded their pulse flow events. So, kind of mentioned fish can stray north into the Sacramento River, but they also can be drawn south into the San Joaquin River as they're staging in the Delta and trying to find their way back home to the Mokelumne River. So those tributaries ended their pulse flow events. So probably more opportunity for those salmon to find their way back to the Mokelumne River. So Yeah, so we're talking rain event, stand and twine postal event, and then there was the Delta Cross Channel. That was peak was within that shaded area within that figure during the Delta Cross Channel closure. So there was that pathway was closed for straying fish.
Great. Thank you, Casey. And then real quick on Tracy, you had asked about factors that influence year after year salmon count. And so you can correct me if I'm wrong, Casey. The return numbers are shaped by like ocean conditions, the river flows and temperatures, habitat quality, predation, fishing, and different hatchery release practices. So if you still had questions, please email those to waterwednesday@ebmud.com, and we would be happy to look at those and get back to you with some answers. But again, thank you, Matt and Casey. We really appreciate your time here sharing about hatchery operations. Please, all of you watching, we'd love to have you up at the hatchery to come visit. And follow us on social media, all our East Bay EBMUD sites, and then you can find out when our next Water Wednesday will be in the new year when we announce it. All right, thanks so much, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.